The engagement ring caught the Sunday afternoon light streaming through our apartment window, throwing tiny rainbows across Laura's nervous face. It wasn't the ring I'd given her 3 years ago when we got married. This one was bigger, flashier, and definitely not from my construction manager's salary. "Mark, we need to talk," she said, fidgeting with the band. Her voice had that careful tone she used when she was about to drop a bomb. I'd heard it before when she'd crashed my truck, when she'd maxed out our credit card on a girls' trip to Vegas, and when she'd accidentally deleted my fantasy football league from our shared computer. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I set down my coffee and looked at her properly. Laura Bishop, née Parker, marketing manager at Pinnacle Financial, daughter of the wealthiest family in our small city of Millbrook. Even nervous, she looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Blonde hair, perfectly styled, makeup flawless, despite claiming she'd just rolled out of bed. "Let me guess," I said, leaning back in my chair. "You've decided our marriage needs more excitement. Or maybe you've found yourself again during your weekend with the girls?" Her face flushed. "How did you—" "The ring, Laura. Unless you've started moonlighting as a jewelry thief, someone else bought that for you." I took another sip of coffee, watching her squirm. "So, who is he?" She twisted the ring around her finger, avoiding my eyes. "His name is Derek. Derek Voss. He works at the same company, in the finance department." "Ah, the finance department." I nodded slowly. "Let me paint a picture here. Expensive suits, drives a BMW, talks about his portfolio at parties. It's not like that. It's exactly like that." I stood up, surprised by how calm I felt. 3 years of marriage, and this was how it ended. Not with a fight or tears or broken dishes. Just a confession on a Sunday afternoon, sunlight making her stolen engagement ring sparkle like a lie. "So what's the plan? You want a divorce? You want me to fight for you? Beg you to stay?" Laura's eyes widened. She'd probably expected anger, maybe pleading. Instead, I walked to the kitchen counter and grabbed a notepad. "Actually, you know what? This makes things simple." I started writing. "You can save us both some time. When's the wedding?" "Mark, you don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly." I looked up from my list. "You've been cheating on me with finance bro Derek, probably for months. You went away for the weekend, he proposed, and now you're back to break the news to your boring construction worker husband. Did I miss anything?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. The guilty look on her face told me everything. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued, tearing the page from the notepad. "You're going to pack a bag with whatever you need for a few days. I'm calling the movers tomorrow morning to box up the rest of your stuff. You can pick it up from the storage unit on 5th Street. I'll text you the unit number and the combination." "You can't just—" "Actually, I can. The lease is in my name. So is the car title, the utilities, the insurance. Funny how that works when you're the one with stable employment and good credit." Laura stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You're not serious." I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my contacts. "Let's see. Morrison Moving Company. Yeah, they're open on Sundays for emergencies. I'd say this qualifies." "Mark, stop. We should talk about this like adults. Adults don't cheat on their spouses and then come home wearing engagement rings from other people." I found the number and hit call. Adults file for divorce first. While the phone rang, I watched Laura's face cycle through confusion, anger, and something that might have been panic. She'd probably expected me to fall apart, to make this difficult for her. Maybe she'd even been looking forward to playing the victim. Poor Laura, trapped in a loveless marriage with a blue-collar husband who didn't understand her needs. "Hello, Morrison Moving?" "Yes, I need a full apartment packed and moved tomorrow morning. Emergency situation." Laura grabbed my arm. "Hang up the phone." I covered the receiver. "Why? So you can string this out for weeks while you figure out which life you want?" "No thanks. You made your choice when you said yes to Derek's proposal. She let go of my arm like I'd burned her. Yes, I'm still here, I said into the phone. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. works perfect. The address is 1247 Oak Street, apartment 3B, just the bedroom, closet, and anything that obviously belongs to a woman. I'll have boxes ready. After I hung up, Laura sank onto our couch. My couch now, I supposed. This is insane, she whispered. No, insane would be pretending this marriage isn't over. Insane would be fighting over who gets the coffee maker while you're already planning your new life with Derek. I sat down across from her, noting how she instinctively pulled her hand back when I reached for it. Tell me something, Laura. When you were trying on that ring, did you think about me at all? Did you wonder how I'd react? Or were you just planning the most convenient way to break the news? She didn't answer, which was answer enough. I thought so. I stood up again. You should probably call Derek. Let him know he's getting a roommate sooner than expected. Where am I supposed to go tonight? Your parents' house is pretty big, as I recall. I'm sure Helen and Gerald would love to hear about your engagement. I smiled, and I could tell from her expression that it wasn't a nice smile. Or Derek's place. I assume you know where he lives by now. Laura stood up abruptly, her face flushed with anger. You're being cruel. I'm being efficient. There's a difference. She stormed toward the bedroom, heels clicking on the hardwood floor. I heard drawers slamming, hangers rattling, and what sounded like a shoe hitting the wall. While she packed, I got back on my phone. First, I called the bank to remove her from our joint checking account, then the credit card company, then the insurance company. By the time she emerged with a hastily packed overnight bag, I'd systematically erased her from my financial life. The locks will be changed by the time you get back, I said without looking up from my phone. Don't bother trying your key. You can't do this. Watch me. She stood in the doorway for a long moment, probably waiting for me to change my mind or show some emotion. When I didn't, she opened the door. You'll regret this, Mark. When you're alone in this apartment, you'll realize what you've lost. I finally looked up at her. You know what I've lost, Laura? A wife who cheats on me and then has the nerve to come home wearing another man's engagement ring. I think I'll manage. The door slammed behind her with enough force to rattle the windows. I sat in the sudden silence of my apartment, listening to her heels click down the hallway toward the elevator. Then I picked up my phone and called my buddy Cliff. Hey, it's Mark. You know that favor you owe me? I'm calling it in. How fast can you get to my place with your truck? Laura's parents lived in Millbrook Heights, the kind of neighborhood where the houses had names instead of just addresses. The Parker estate, Willowbrook Manor, according to the bronze plaque by the gate, sat on 3 acres of perfectly manicured lawn, complete with a circular driveway and a fountain that probably cost more than I made in a year. I knew Laura was there because I'd driven by an hour after she left our apartment. Her silver Accord was parked next to her mother's Mercedes, and I could see lights on in the main sitting room where the Parker family held their Sunday evening cocktail hour. I didn't stop. I had work to do. By the time I got home, Cliff was waiting in the parking lot with his pickup truck and a grin that suggested he was enjoying this more than he should. So she really did it? He asked as we rode the elevator up to my floor. Came home wearing another guy's ring? Bigger than a marble, I confirmed. Probably cost more than my truck. Cliff whistled low. And you're really kicking her out tonight? Already did. Movers come tomorrow morning. Damn, Mark. Remind me never to piss you off. We spent the next 2 hours going through the apartment, identifying everything that belonged to Laura or that we'd bought together. It was surprising how little of our shared life was actually shared. Most of the furniture was mine from before we got married. The electronics, the kitchen stuff, even most of the books, all mine. Laura's contributions to our household were mainly clothes, shoes, and what she called decorative touches, throw pillows, candles, and framed photos of herself at various social events. She's got more shoes than my ex-wife and my sister combined, Cliff observed, looking into our bedroom closet. Had, I corrected. She had more shoes. We loaded everything that was obviously hers into boxes and garbage bags, then hauled it all down to Cliff's truck. 3 years of marriage, and it fit in the back of a pickup with room to spare. You want me to drive this stuff to the storage unit now? Cliff asked. Tomorrow's fine. I want to make a few more phone calls first. After Cliff left, I sat down with my laptop and really got to work. Laura had always been careless with passwords. She used the same one for everything. Princess 1985, her childhood nickname and birth year. It took me about 30 seconds to get into her email account. What I found there was illuminating. The affair with Derek had been going on for 4 months. 4 months of lunch meetings that turned into afternoon hotel visits. 4 months of her complaining about me to another man, calling me boring and small-minded and an end. But the real gems were Derek's emails to her. Derek Voss, it turned out, was not the sophisticated finance professional Laura thought she was getting. His messages were full of spelling errors and juvenile humor. He called her babe and hottie and signed his emails with XOXO Derek like a teenager. More interesting were the details about his life that he'd apparently shared with her. He was 38 and still lived in a 1-bedroom condo that he was behind on payments for. His BMW was leased, and he was 3 months behind on that too. He'd been married twice before, both marriages ending in expensive divorces that had left him nearly bankrupt. In other words, Derek Voss was broke, desperate, and looking for a meal ticket, and Laura, with her family money and stable job, looked like the perfect solution to his problems. I took screenshots of everything and saved them to a folder on my desktop. Then I did something that probably wasn't entirely legal but felt absolutely necessary. I forwarded the most damning emails to Derek's work address with a note. Derek, thought you should know that your fiancé's husband found these in her email. Congratulations on the engagement. You two deserve each other. Mark Bishop. Then I sent a similar package to Laura's parents. Helen and Gerald, Laura asked me to share some exciting news with you. She's engaged. I've attached some of the romantic correspondence between her and her new fiancé. I'm sure you'll be thrilled to welcome Derek into the family. Mark. By the time I finished, it was nearly midnight. I poured myself a beer and sat on my balcony looking out at the city lights. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mark, this is Derek. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, No, we don't. Another buzz. Look, I didn't know she was still married when this started. Sure you didn't. I'm serious. She told me you were separated. I laughed out loud at that. Derek, I've seen your emails. You knew exactly what you were doing. Enjoy your new fiancée. Hope you can afford her. The next text came a few minutes later. You're making a mistake, man. Laura loves you. She's just confused. Then why is she wearing your ring? No response to that. I was about to go inside when my phone rang. Laura's number. Mark, what did you do? Her voice was shaking with rage. I shared your good news with the people who care about you. Your parents seemed particularly excited about meeting Derek. You had no right to go through my email. Actually, since it was on our shared computer using our shared internet connection, in our shared apartment, I had every right. I took a sip of my beer. How did the conversation with your parents go? I imagine Helen had some thoughts about your romantic correspondence. The silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. They threw me out, she finally whispered. Shocking. It's almost like they don't approve of adultery. This is all your fault. My fault? I'm not the one who cheated. I'm not the one who came home wearing another man's ring. All I did was make sure the important people in your life knew about your exciting engagement. Derek won't even answer his phone now. Maybe he's busy figuring out how to afford an engagement ring on a finance bro salary. Those things are expensive, and I hear he's a little behind on his bills. Another long silence. Mark, please, can we just talk about this like adults? We did talk about it. This afternoon. You remember? When you told me you were leaving me for Derek? I didn't say I was leaving you. You didn't have to. The ring said it for you. I finished my beer and stood up. Look, Laura, I'm tired. It's been a long day. You should probably call Derek back. Maybe he'll answer this time. Where am I supposed to go? My parents won't let me in the house, Derek isn't answering his phone, and you've changed the locks. There's a Holiday Inn on Route 9. I hear they have reasonable weekly rates. I hung up and turned off my phone. The apartment felt different without her things in it. Bigger somehow, cleaner, like someone had opened all the windows and let in fresh air. I slept better that night than I had in months. Monday morning came with the sound of the Morrison moving truck rumbling into the parking lot at exactly 8 a.m. I met the crew downstairs and led them up to the apartment, where Laura's belongings sat neatly boxed and bagged by the door. That's everything? The crew chief asked, looking at the surprisingly small pile. That's everything. It took them 20 minutes to load it all. 3 years of marriage, reduced to a half-hour moving job. I followed them to the storage facility on 5th Street and watched them unload everything into a 10x10 unit. The monthly fee was $85, which I paid for exactly 1 month. After that, it would be Laura's problem. On my way to work, I stopped at Millbrook Diner for breakfast. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and news traveled faster than gossip at a church social. "Mark Bishop!" called out Dolores, the waitress who'd been serving coffee there since before I was born. "Heard you had some excitement yesterday." I slid into my usual booth. News travels fast. Honey, in this town, news travels at the speed of light. Mrs. Henderson saw that moving truck at your place this morning, said they were loading up women's clothes and such. Mrs. Henderson lived in the apartment below mine and had apparently made surveillance her full-time hobby since retiring from the post office. "Laura and I are getting divorced," I said simply. Dolores poured coffee without being asked. About time, if you ask me. That girl always thought she was too good for this town. I didn't ask, but thanks for the input. You want your usual? Make it a double. It's going to be a long day. She was right about that. By the time I got to the construction site where I was managing a new shopping center project, word had already spread through my crew. Construction workers are worse gossips than hairdressers, and they'd apparently been speculating about my marriage for months. "So it's true?" asked Jimmy Kowalski, my lead electrician. "Laura ran off with some suit from her office?" "Something like that." "Good riddance," said Pete Morales, who was running the plumbing crew. "My wife never liked her. Said she had airs. Your wife's a smart woman." We got to work, but I could tell the guys were dying to know more details. I let them wonder. The truth would come out eventually. It always did in Millbrook, but I wasn't going to be the one spreading it around. Around lunchtime, my phone started buzzing with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I ignored them until I saw one from Derek's office. "Mark Bishop." "Mr. Bishop, this is Janet Coleman from Human Resources at Pinnacle Financial. I'm calling about some emails that were sent to our company server yesterday." "What about them?" "Well, they contained some rather personal information about 2 of our employees and—" "Let me stop you right there, Janet. Those emails were sent from my wife's personal account to your employee, Derek Voss. If Derek chose to receive personal emails at work, that's between him and your IT department." But the content was quite explicit and the content was evidence of adultery. If that makes your company uncomfortable, maybe you should talk to your employees about their personal conduct. There was a pause. "Mr. Bishop, I understand you're upset, but—" "I'm not upset, Janet. I'm divorced. Or I will be as soon as I file the paperwork. Have a nice day." I hung up and went back to reviewing blueprints. An hour later, Cliff wandered over from the concrete crew with a grin on his face. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "My cousin Danny works security at that fancy office building downtown. Says there was quite a scene at Pinnacle Financial this morning." "Oh yeah?" "Yeah. Apparently some finance guy got called into HR and came out looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Then about an hour later, some blonde woman showed up demanding to see him, and security had to escort her out when she started screaming in the lobby. I looked up from my blueprints. Screaming about what? Something about him ruining her life and not answering his phone. Danny said she was wearing a ring that could blind a pilot. Interesting. Gets better. The finance guy, Derek something, apparently got fired. Walked out with his stuff in a cardboard box around noon. I felt a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. That is interesting. Danny said the blonde woman was waiting for him in the parking lot. They had what he called a spirited discussion next to a BMW that was getting repossessed. Repossessed? Tow truck showed up right in the middle of their fight. Guy had to choose between saving his car and dealing with his crazy fiancée. He chose the car. And? Tow truck driver said the paperwork was already signed. Car was gone either way, but the finance guy didn't know that. He spent 20 minutes arguing with the driver while the blonde woman stood there screaming at both of them. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. There's more, Cliff continued. After the tow truck left, the blonde woman apparently threw her ring at the finance guy and stormed off. Danny said Derek, that was his name, Derek, spent another 10 minutes crawling around the parking lot looking for it. Did he find it? Oh yeah, but when he stood up, she was long gone. Danny said he just stood there holding this big diamond ring, looking like he wanted to cry. I wiped my eyes and tried to compose myself. Sounds like they're having some relationship issues. Sounds like they deserve each other. That evening, I stopped by Murphy's Tavern, Millbrook's oldest and most popular bar. It was the kind of place where the beer was cold, the food was decent, and everyone minded their own business unless you wanted them to mind yours. Stan Murphy, the owner, was a friend of my father's and had known me since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. He was also the unofficial keeper of Millbrook's secrets, the guy everyone talked to when they needed to vent or get advice or just hear the latest gossip. "Mark," he called out as I walked in. "Heard you're a free man again." Word travels fast. Faster than usual when it involves the Parker family. Your ex-wife's been quite the topic of conversation today. I ordered a beer and a burger. What's the word? Well, let's see. She got kicked out of her parents' house last night. Helen Parker was apparently quite vocal about her feelings regarding adultery. She spent the night at the Holiday Inn, then showed up at her boyfriend's office this morning just in time to watch him get fired. Tough day? Gets tougher. Turns out this Derek character has been living beyond his means for quite some time. Lost his car today, and word is he's about to lose his apartment too. Laura's been calling everyone she knows, trying to find someone to take her in, but apparently the Parker family has a lot of influence in this town. Meaning? Meaning nobody wants to cross Helen Parker by helping her disgraced daughter. Laura's persona non grata until this all blows over. I took a long drink of my beer. And Derek? Derek's apparently decided that being engaged to a homeless woman isn't as appealing as he thought. Joanne Miller, you remember Joanne, works at the bank. She saw him at the pawn shop this afternoon, trying to sell an engagement ring. No kidding. No kidding. Joanne said he looked like hell. Kept muttering about crazy women and ruined lives. Stan leaned across the bar, lowering his voice. Between you and me, Mark, I think you handled this exactly right. Quick, clean, no drama. Some guys would have made a big scene, maybe done something stupid, but you just cut them loose and let them destroy themselves. I didn't do anything, Stan. I just stopped enabling Laura's bad behavior. Sometimes that's all it takes. My phone buzzed with a text. Another unknown number. Mark, this is Laura. I know you don't want to talk to me, but I need help. I have nowhere to go and no money. Derek broke up with me and I can't reach anyone else. Please. I showed the message to Stan, who read it and shook his head. What are you going to do? I thought about it for a moment, then typed back, Laura, you made your choice when you accepted Derek's proposal. Live with it. Then I blocked the number. Cold, Stan observed. Practical, I corrected. She's not my problem anymore. But even as I said it, I knew this wasn't over. Laura Parker had never faced real consequences for anything in her life. Her parents had always bailed her out, her friends had always supported her, and I had always been there to clean up her messes. Now, for the first time, she was truly on her own, and I had a feeling she wasn't going to handle it well. Tuesday morning brought rain and a phone call from my lawyer, Tom Bradley. Tom had handled my father's estate and had been the family attorney for as long as I could remember. "Mark, I got your message about filing for divorce. You want to come in this afternoon and get the paperwork started?" "Absolutely. How long does the process take in Pennsylvania?" "Uncontested, about 90 days minimum, but I have a feeling this won't be uncontested." He was right about that. When I arrived at Tom's office at 2 o'clock, his secretary informed me that Laura had called 3 times that morning, demanding to speak with him about her husband's illegal actions. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "That Mr. Bradley doesn't represent her and can't discuss his client's legal matters with third parties," said Margaret, Tom's secretary of 30 years. She wasn't happy about that. Tom's office was on the second floor of a converted Victorian house downtown, with big windows that looked out over Main Street. It was the kind of place that made you feel like you were in a John Grisham novel, all dark wood and leather-bound law books. "So, tell me what happened," Tom said, settling into his chair behind a desk that probably weighed more than my truck. I gave him the condensed version: the ring, the confession, the immediate eviction, the email evidence, and the subsequent implosion of Laura's new relationship. "You moved fast," he observed. "I saw an opportunity and took it. Smart. The longer these things drag out, the messier they get." He pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. "Now, about assets. You said the apartment lease is in your name?" "Everything's in my name. When we got married, Laura had terrible credit and no steady income. I kept her off the major contracts to protect myself." "Good. What about joint accounts?" "Closed them yesterday. Moved everything to individual accounts." "Even better. Savings, investments?" "All mine. Laura never contributed to savings. She spent everything she made on clothes and spa treatments and girls' weekends." Tom looked up from his notes. "This might be the easiest divorce I've ever handled. She doesn't have a claim to much of anything." "That's what I figured. There is one thing, though. Her family has money. They might hire her a good lawyer, try to make things difficult out of spite." "I don't think that's going to happen." I told him about the emails I'd sent to her parents and their reaction to discovering their daughter's affair. Tom whistled low. "You really did think this through, didn't you?" "I had a long Sunday night to plan." We spent the next hour going through paperwork and discussing strategy. Tom would file the divorce petition by the end of the week, citing adultery and abandonment. With the email evidence and the fact that Laura had left the marital home voluntarily, it should be straightforward. "One more thing," Tom said as I was getting ready to leave. "You might want to be careful for the next few weeks. People don't always react rationally when their lives fall apart." "You think Laura might cause trouble?" "I think desperate people do desperate things, and from what you've told me, your ex-wife is about as desperate as they come." He was more right than he knew. I was walking back to my truck when I heard someone call my name. I turned to see Joanne Miller hurrying across the street from the bank, her umbrella struggling against the wind. "Mark, I was hoping I'd run into you." Joanne was in her 50s, a longtime Millbrook resident who knew everyone and everything that happened in town. She was also one of the few people who'd never seemed particularly impressed by Laura's family connections. "Hi, Joanne. How are you?" "I'm fine, but I thought you should know. Laura was at the bank this morning, trying to access your joint accounts. We closed those accounts yesterday." "I know. That's what I told her. But she insisted there had been some mistake, that you didn't have the authority to close them without her signature." "What did you tell her?" "The truth. That you opened those accounts before you were married, added her as a joint holder later, and had every right to remove her and close them." Joanne lowered her voice. She didn't take it well. Define didn't take it well. She started screaming about how you'd stolen her money and ruined her life. Security had to escort her out. I sighed. Sorry you had to deal with that. Oh, I've seen worse. But Mark, she seemed unhinged. Really unhinged. She kept saying she was going to make you pay for destroying her future. Noted. Thanks for the heads up. There's something else. She asked about your accounts, your personal accounts. Wanted to know balances, recent transactions, that sort of thing. And I told her that information was confidential, and I couldn't share it even if we were still married, which we're not. Joanne paused. But she seemed to think she was entitled to half of everything you own. She's not. I know that. But I'm not sure she does. That evening, I decided to stop by Murphy's again for dinner. It was becoming a habit, and I was finding I enjoyed the company and the sense of community. Plus, Stan always had the best gossip in town. "Mark," Stan called out as I walked in. "You're becoming a regular. Good food, good company. Can't ask for more than that." I ordered my usual burger and fries with a beer and settled in at the bar. The place was busier than usual for a Tuesday night, probably because of the rain keeping people indoors. "So," Stan said, wiping down glasses, "heard Laura made quite a scene at the bank today. News travels fast. Faster when it involves someone screaming about stolen money in the middle of the bank lobby." Stan leaned closer. "Joanne called her sister, who called her daughter, who called my niece. You know how it goes." I know how it goes. Also heard Derek Voss is staying at the Sleepy Inn Motel out on Route 9. Apparently his landlord changed the locks on his apartment yesterday. Tough week for Derek. Tough week for both of them. Word is they've been calling each other all day, screaming about whose fault this whole mess is. I was about to respond when the front door opened and 3 people walked in, shaking rain off their coats. I recognized them immediately. Brad Kowalski, Mike Chen, and Sarah Martinez. They'd been Laura's friends. Well, our friends, technically, though they'd always made it clear they tolerated me for Laura's sake. They spotted me at the bar and exchanged glances. After a moment of whispered conversation, they walked over. "Mark," Brad said, his tone cold, "we need to talk." "About what?" "About what you did to Laura." Stan, sensing trouble, moved closer to our end of the bar. A few other patrons turned to watch. "I didn't do anything to Laura. Laura did something to me." "You threw her out of her own home." Sarah's voice was rising. "She has nowhere to go." "She has Derek, or had Derek. I hear that didn't work out so well." Mike stepped forward. "This is serious, Mark. Laura is in real trouble. She's been sleeping in her car for 2 nights because she can't afford a hotel." "That's unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" Brad's face was getting red. "She's homeless because of you. She's homeless because she cheated on me and then came home wearing another man's engagement ring. I just declined to continue enabling her bad behavior." "You sent those emails to her parents," Sarah accused. "You deliberately destroyed her relationship with her family." "I shared information about her engagement with people who cared about her. How they chose to react was up to them." The confrontation was attracting more attention now. Stan had moved to where he could reach the phone if needed, and several other patrons had turned in their seats to watch. "You're a vindictive bastard," Mike said. "Laura made one mistake." "One mistake?" I laughed. "Mike, she was cheating on me for 4 months. 4 months of lying to my face, sneaking around behind my back, and planning her exit strategy. That's not one mistake. That's a pattern of behavior." "She was unhappy," Sarah shot back. "You never paid attention to her, never took her anywhere nice, never—" "Never what?" "Never supported her financially while she spent her entire salary on designer clothes? Never covered for her when she called in sick to work because she was hungover? Never cleaned up her messes when she maxed out credit cards or crashed cars or got into fights with her co-workers?" The bar had gone completely quiet now. Even the jukebox seemed to have stopped playing. "You don't understand," Brad said. "Laura's always been Fragile. She needs support, not punishment. Laura's 32 years old. She's not fragile, she's spoiled. There's a difference. So you decided to destroy her life? I decided to stop being responsible for her choices. I stood up, fishing a 20 out of my wallet and putting it on the bar. Laura chose to cheat. Laura chose to accept another man's proposal. Laura chose to come home and tell me about it while wearing his ring. I just chose not to make those choices easy for her. She's scared, Mark, Sarah said, her voice softer now. She called me crying last night. She doesn't know what to do. Then maybe she should have thought about that before she decided to blow up our marriage. Can't you just help her get back on her feet? Let her stay in the apartment for a few weeks while she figures things out? I stared at Sarah for a long moment. Let me ask you something. If your husband came home wearing another woman's engagement ring, would you let him stay in your house while he figured out his new life? Sarah didn't answer. That's what I thought. I picked up my jacket. Laura made her bed. Now she gets to sleep in it. This isn't over, Mark, Brad called out as I headed for the door. We're not going to let you destroy her. I stopped and turned back to face them. You want to help Laura? Here's some advice. Tell her to get a job that pays better than part-time marketing assistant. Tell her to stop spending money she doesn't have on things she doesn't need. Tell her to take responsibility for her actions instead of expecting other people to fix her problems. She has a job. Had. Past tense. She got fired yesterday for creating a disturbance in the office. The three of them stared at me. Didn't know that, did you? I smiled. Turns out showing up at your workplace to scream at your coworkers about your personal life is considered unprofessional. Who would have thought? I left them standing there and walked out into the rain. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation was just the beginning. Laura's friends were clearly planning something, and desperate people with righteous anger could be dangerous. Tom Bradley's warning echoed in my head. Desperate people do desperate things. I had a feeling I was about to find out just how desperate Laura could get. Wednesday started with a bang, literally. Someone had thrown a rock through my apartment window during the night, shattering the glass and leaving a note tied around it with a rubber band. You ruined everything. Now I'm going to ruin you. L. I called the police to file a report, then called a glass repair company. Officer Janet Rodriguez arrived first, a woman in her 30s, who'd been with the Millbrook PD for about 5 years. Any idea who might have done this? She asked, photographing the broken window and the note. My soon-to-be ex-wife, Laura Bishop. You're getting divorced? Filed the paperwork yesterday. She's been upset about it. Officer Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Upset enough to throw rocks through windows? Apparently. I told her about the affair, the confrontation at Murphy's, and Laura's increasingly erratic behavior over the past few days. She took notes and said they'd look into it, but we both knew that unless they caught Laura in the act, there wasn't much they could do. The glass repair crew arrived an hour later and had the window fixed by noon. I was getting ready to head to the construction site when my phone rang. Unknown number. Mark Bishop. Mr. Bishop, this is Detective Ray Martinez with the Millbrook Police. I understand you filed a vandalism report this morning? That's right. I'd like to talk to you about that. Are you available to come down to the station? Is there a problem? Just some follow-up questions. Nothing urgent, but I'd appreciate it if you could stop by when you have a chance. I drove to the police station, a modern brick building on the edge of downtown. Detective Martinez was waiting in the lobby, a man in his 40s with graying hair and the kind of tired eyes that suggested he'd seen too much of human nature's dark side. Thanks for coming in, he said, leading me to a small interview room. I wanted to talk to you about your wife. Ex-wife. Right. Laura Bishop. We had some interaction with her yesterday that I thought you should know about. He opened a file folder and pulled out several photographs. They showed Laura's car parked outside my apartment building, Laura sitting in the driver's seat with binoculars, and Laura following my truck through downtown Millbrook. "She's been stalking you," Detective Martinez said simply. I stared at the photos. "How long has this been going on?" "We're not sure. A concerned citizen called yesterday afternoon to report suspicious behavior. A woman sitting in a car for hours watching your building with binoculars. We sent a patrol car to check it out." "And?" "Officer Rodriguez approached the vehicle and found your wife in what could only be described as a surveillance setup. She had binoculars, a notebook with times and locations, and photographs of you taken with a telephoto lens." He showed me more photos, pictures of me leaving my apartment, going to work, eating at Murphy's, meeting with my lawyer. They looked like they'd been taken from a distance, but the detail was clear enough to be unsettling. "What did you do?" "We asked her to move along. Technically, she wasn't breaking any laws. She was parked on a public street, and taking photographs in public isn't illegal. But we documented everything in case the situation escalates. And then she threw a rock through my window." "Apparently. The timeline fits." Detective Martinez leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Bishop, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've seen a lot of domestic situations go bad. Your wife is showing signs of serious instability. What do you recommend?" "File for a restraining order, today. And be careful. People who start with surveillance and vandalism sometimes escalate to more serious crimes." I left the police station with a restraining order application and a growing sense that this situation was spiraling out of control. Laura had always been dramatic, but this level of obsessive behavior was new. I stopped by Tom Bradley's office to drop off the police report and discuss the restraining order. His secretary Margaret looked worried when she saw me. "Mr. Bishop, thank goodness you're here. That woman has been calling every hour since we opened, demanding to speak with you." "Laura?" "She says she knows you're here, that she's watching the building. She wants to negotiate a settlement before things get worse." Tom emerged from his office looking grim. "Mark, we need to talk. Come in." He closed the door behind us and gestured to a chair. "I just got off the phone with the courthouse. Someone tried to file a counterpetition to your divorce yesterday." "Laura?" "Presumably. But here's the interesting part. The filing was rejected because she couldn't afford the court fees." "How much are the court fees?" $300. I stared at him. Laura was broke, completely, utterly broke. No job, no home, no family support, and now no money for basic legal processes. "There's more," Tom continued. "The clerk said the woman who tried to file the petition was agitated. She kept insisting that you'd stolen her money and that she was entitled to half of everything you own. She's not entitled to anything. I know that, but she doesn't seem to understand it. The clerk said she had to call security when the woman started screaming about corruption and conspiracy." My phone buzzed with a text from another unknown number. "I know you're in the lawyer's office. I can see your truck. We need to talk now." I showed the message to Tom, who frowned. "She's watching the building?" I walked to the window and looked down at the street. Laura's silver Accord was parked across the street, and I could see her sitting in the driver's seat, staring up at the building. "She's right there." Tom joined me at the window. "That's definitely stalking behavior. You need to file that restraining order immediately." "I will. But first, I think it's time to end this." "What do you mean?" "I mean Laura wants to talk, so let's talk. But on my terms." I pulled out my phone and called the number she'd been texting from. She answered on the first ring. "Mark, finally. We need to—" "Laura, I can see you from the window. You need to stop this." "I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm parked on a public street." "You're stalking me. The police have photographs." There was a pause. "I just want to talk. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." "Fine. Murphy's Tavern. 1 hour. Come alone." "Mark, I don't think—" Tom started, but I held up a hand. 1 hour, Laura. And then this ends." I hung up and turned to Tom. I'm going to finish this today. That's not a good idea. She's clearly unstable. She's desperate, not dangerous. And I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. An hour later, I was sitting at Murphy's Tavern when Laura walked in. She looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had dark circles under her eyes that suggested she hadn't been sleeping. She slid into the booth across from me, and I could smell alcohol on her breath even though it was only 3 p.m. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said. "You have 5 minutes. Mark, I know I made mistakes, but what you've done to me is cruel and vindictive and—" "Stop." I held up a hand. "You don't get to play the victim here. You cheated on me for 4 months, came home wearing another man's engagement ring, and then acted surprised when I didn't want to continue being married to you. It was a mistake. It was a choice. A series of choices, actually, and now you're living with the consequences." Laura's eyes filled with tears. "I have nothing, Mark. No job, no home, no money. Derek won't even talk to me. My parents have disowned me. I'm sleeping in my car. That's unfortunate." "Unfortunate?" Her voice rose. "I'm homeless because of you. You're homeless because you made terrible decisions. I just stopped enabling them. You could have handled this differently. We could have worked things out, gone to counseling, tried to save our marriage." I leaned back in the booth. "Laura, let me ask you something. When Derek proposed, what was your plan? Were you going to come home and ask for a divorce? Were you going to keep seeing him while staying married to me? What exactly did you think was going to happen?" She didn't answer. "That's what I thought. You had no plan because you never expected to face consequences. You thought you could have your cake and eat it too, keep me as the stable, reliable husband while having your exciting affair with Derek." "That's not true." "It's exactly true. You know how I know? Because in 4 months of emails with Derek, you never once mentioned leaving me. You complained about me, you called me boring, but you never talked about divorce. You wanted to keep both of us." Laura wiped her eyes with a napkin. "What do you want from me, Mark? What do I have to do to make this right? You can't make this right. It's over. Please, I'm begging you. Just let me come home for a few weeks while I figure things out. I'll sleep on the couch. I won't bother you. I just need—" "No. Mark, please." "No, Laura. You made your choice. Live with it." I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my arm. "If you don't help me, I'll make your life hell. I'll tell everyone in this town that you threw your wife out on the street. I'll ruin your reputation, your business, everything." I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. "Laura, everyone in this town already knows what happened. They know you cheated. They know you came home wearing another man's ring, and they know I kicked you out. And you know what? They're on my side. That's not true. Ask Stan. Ask anyone in here." I gently removed her hand from my arm. "You're not the victim in this story, Laura. You're the villain, and everyone knows it." I walked out of Murphy's and drove home, feeling lighter than I had in days. But as I pulled into my parking lot, I saw Laura's car following behind me. She parked next to my truck and got out, her face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," she screamed. "You think you've won? But I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to take everything you have." I ignored her and walked toward the building entrance. "Mark, don't you walk away from me." I kept walking. "I know things about you. Things that could ruin your business, your reputation, everything." I stopped and turned around. "What things, Laura?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. We both knew she had nothing. "That's what I thought." I went inside and took the elevator to my apartment. Through my newly repaired window, I could see Laura sitting in her car in the parking lot, staring up at the building. My phone rang. Detective Martinez. "Mr. Bishop, we've had several calls about a disturbance at Murphy's Tavern, and now at your apartment complex. Is everything all right? Laura's having a breakdown in my parking lot. We're sending a car over. In the meantime, stay inside and don't engage with her." 20 minutes later, I watched from my window as a police car pulled into the parking lot. Officer Rodriguez got out and walked over to Laura's car. They talked for a few minutes, then Laura drove away. My phone rang again. Mr. Bishop, this is Officer Rodriguez. We've asked your ex-wife to leave the premises. She's agreed to do so, but I have to tell you, she's in a very agitated state. What did she say? She kept talking about how you'd stolen her life and ruined her future. She also made some vague threats about making you pay. Noted. Mr. Bishop, I strongly recommend you file that restraining order first thing tomorrow morning. This situation is escalating, and we want to have legal tools in place if we need them. After Officer Rodriguez hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and thought about the past few days. A week ago, I'd been married to a woman who was cheating on me. Now, I was free. She was homeless, and her lover had abandoned her. It wasn't the outcome I'd planned when she walked in wearing Derek's ring. I'd just wanted her gone. But sometimes, when you stop enabling someone's bad behavior, their whole house of cards collapses. My phone buzzed with one final text from Laura's number. You haven't seen the last of me. I deleted the message and blocked the number. Outside, the rain had stopped and the sun was setting behind the mountains that surrounded Millbrook. It was going to be a beautiful evening. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Thursday morning brought unexpected visitors. I was drinking coffee and reading the paper when someone knocked on my door. Through the peephole, I could see two people I didn't recognize, a man in an expensive suit and a woman with a briefcase. Mr. Bishop, I'm David Chen, attorney for Helen and Gerald Parker. This is my associate, Jennifer Walsh. We'd like to speak with you about your wife. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Ex-wife. And what about her? May we come in? This is a delicate matter that would be better discussed privately. Against my better judgment, I let them into my living room. David Chen was probably in his 50s, with the kind of polished appearance that screamed expensive legal representation. Jennifer Walsh looked younger, maybe early 30s, and was taking notes on everything. Mr. Bishop, Chen began, settling into my armchair without being invited. My clients are concerned about their daughter's current situation. Their daughter is an adult who made adult choices. Her situation is the result of those choices. Nevertheless, they feel that perhaps the dissolution of your marriage could be handled more amicably. I sat down across from him. What exactly are you proposing? Jennifer Walsh opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. We're prepared to offer you a settlement. A settlement for what? For allowing Laura to return to the marital home while the divorce proceedings are finalized, and for agreeing not to contest her claim to half of the marital assets. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Mr. Bishop, Chen said stiffly, this is a serious offer. It's a serious joke. Laura isn't entitled to half of anything. We were married for 3 years. She never contributed to our savings or investments, and she committed adultery. In Pennsylvania, that matters. Nevertheless, nothing. Laura cheated on me, came home wearing another man's engagement ring, and is now facing the consequences of her actions. Her parents' money doesn't change that. Chen's expression hardened. Mr. Bishop, my clients are prepared to be very generous. We're talking about a significant sum of money. How significant? Jennifer Walsh slid a paper across the coffee table. $50,000. Cash. In exchange for an uncontested divorce that gives Laura half of all marital assets and allows her to remain in this apartment until the divorce is finalized. I looked at the number on the paper, then back at Chen. Let me make sure I understand this. You want to pay me $50,000 to let my cheating ex-wife move back in with me and give her half of everything I own? That's correct. And if I don't agree? Then my clients will hire the best divorce attorney in the state and make this process as difficult and expensive as possible for you. I stood up. Mr. Chen, I think we're done here. Mr. Bishop, you should consider this carefully. Divorce litigation can be very costly, and my clients have significant resources. Your clients also have a daughter who committed adultery and abandoned the marital home. Good luck explaining that to a judge. I walked to the door and opened it. Have a nice day. After they left, I called Tom Bradley and told him about the visit. 50,000? He whistled. They're really desperate. Desperate enough to threaten a court battle they can't win? Desperate enough to try. But Mark, this actually works in our favor. The fact that they're offering money proves they know Laura doesn't have a legal leg to stand on. So what do? We proceed as planned. File the divorce petition, present the evidence of adultery, and let the court decide. With what we have, this should be straightforward. That afternoon, I was at the construction site when Cliff came running over with his phone in his hand. Mark, you need to see this. He showed me a Facebook post from someone named Laura Parker Bishop. The post had been shared dozens of times already and was spreading fast. My husband threw me out of our home with no warning and no money. He changed the locks, closed our bank accounts, and left me homeless. I made a mistake, but I don't deserve this. If anyone can help with a place to stay or a job, please message me. I'm desperate. The post had dozens of comments, mostly from people I didn't recognize. Some were sympathetic, offering prayers and support. Others were more skeptical, asking for details about what kind of mistake she'd made. But it was the responses from people I did know that caught my attention. Several of Laura's friends had shared the post with their own commentary, painting me as a vindictive husband who'd thrown his wife out over a minor indiscretion. She's trying to control the narrative, Cliff observed. Let her try. The truth has a way of coming out. I was right about that. By evening, the Facebook post had attracted attention from people who knew the real story. Stan Murphy had commented with a simple, "There's more to this story than what's being shared here." Mrs. Henderson from my apartment building had added, "Some people need to take responsibility for their own actions." But the comment that really caught my attention was from Derek Voss himself. Laura, you need to stop this. What happened between us is over, and dragging Mark through social media isn't going to change anything. Take responsibility for your choices and move on. The post was deleted an hour later. That evening, I was having dinner at Murphy's when Sarah Martinez walked in alone. She looked around the bar, spotted me, and walked over. "Mark, can I talk to you?" "Sure." She slid into the booth across from me, looking uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology." "For what?" "For the other night, for not understanding the whole situation." She paused. "I saw Laura's Facebook post today, and then I saw Derek's comment. I had no idea she'd been cheating for months." "Most people didn't. She told us you two were having problems, that you'd grown apart. She made it sound like the affair was a recent thing, a moment of weakness." 4 months isn't a moment of weakness, Sarah. It's a relationship. "I know that now." She fidgeted with her napkin. "She called me this afternoon, begging me to let her stay at my place. She said she was sleeping in her car and had nowhere else to go." "What did you tell her?" "I told her no. After seeing Derek's comment and talking to some other people, I realized there's a lot about this situation that Laura hasn't been honest about." Sarah leaned forward. "Mark, I want you to know that not all of her friends are against you. Some of us are starting to understand that Laura created this mess herself. I appreciate that. There's something else. Laura's been calling everyone she knows, trying to find someone to take her in, but word is getting around about what really happened. People are starting to distance themselves from her. That's unfortunate, but not surprising. She's also been talking about revenge, about finding a way to hurt you the way you've hurt her." I looked up from my dinner. "What kind of revenge?" "I don't know specifics, but she's angry, Mark. Really angry. And she blames you for everything that's happened." After Sarah left, I sat at the bar talking with Stan about the situation. "You know," Stan said, "I've been thinking about this whole thing, and I have to say, you handled it exactly right." "How so?" You didn't get emotional, you didn't do anything illegal, and you didn't let her manipulate you into taking care of her after she betrayed you. A lot of guys would have either gotten violent or would have let her walk all over them. I just wanted her gone. And now she's gone. The question is, what's she going to do next? I didn't have to wait long to find out. Friday morning, I woke up to find my truck's tires slashed and bastard spray-painted across the windshield. A note was tucked under the wiper blade. This is just the beginning. You destroyed my life, now I'm going to destroy yours. I called the police again, and Officer Rodriguez arrived within 20 minutes. This is definitely escalating, she said, photographing the damage. Have you filed that restraining order yet? I'm going to the courthouse this afternoon. Good. In the meantime, we're going to increase patrols in this area, and Mr. Bishop, you might want to consider staying somewhere else for a few nights. I'm not going to let her chase me out of my own home. I understand that, but desperate people do unpredictable things. After the police left, I called my insurance company and arranged for my truck to be towed to a body shop. Then I called Cliff to ask for a ride to the courthouse. Man, he said when he saw the damage. She really lost it. Apparently. You know what this means, though? What? She's running out of options. People only lash out like this when they're backed into a corner with nowhere else to go. The restraining order was approved that afternoon. Judge Patricia Williams, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, read through the police reports and evidence of stalking behavior. Mr. Bishop, I'm granting a temporary restraining order that prohibits Ms. Bishop from coming within 500 feet of you, your residence, your workplace, or your vehicle. This order is effective immediately and will remain in place pending a full hearing next week. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm also ordering that Ms. Bishop be served with these papers immediately. Do you know her current address? Last I heard, she was sleeping in her car. Judge Williams frowned. That's problematic. We'll have to serve her through publication in the local newspaper if we can't locate her. As it turned out, locating Laura wasn't difficult. When Cliff and I left the courthouse, we found her sitting in her car in the parking lot, watching the building. The process server, a woman named Carol who'd been doing this job for 20 years, walked over to Laura's car and tapped on the window. Laura Bishop, I have papers for you. Laura rolled down the window. What kind of papers? Restraining order. You're required to stay at least 500 feet away from your ex-husband at all times. Laura's face went white, then red. This is harassment. Ma'am, you need to read these papers carefully. Violating a restraining order is a criminal offense. Laura snatched the papers and drove off without another word. Well, Carol said, walking back over to us, that went better than expected. Usually there's more screaming. That evening, I had dinner at Murphy's and filled Stan in on the day's events. Restraining order, huh? Think that'll stop her? Probably not. But now if she comes near me, she gets arrested. Might be what she needs. Sometimes people don't get their lives together until they hit rock bottom. Laura's definitely hit rock bottom. Question is, what's she going to do now? She can't get near you, she's got no money, no job, no place to live. Her options are pretty limited. Stan was right about that. But I underestimated just how far Laura was willing to go. Saturday morning, I woke up to my phone ringing. Detective Martinez. Mr. Bishop, we need to talk. Can you come down to the station? What's wrong? Just come down. We'll explain when you get here. An hour later, I was sitting in the same interview room where I'd met with Detective Martinez earlier in the week. But this time, he wasn't alone. A woman in a business suit was sitting across from him, and she didn't look happy. Mr. Bishop, this is Agent Susan Kelly with the FBI. She has some questions for you. FBI? My stomach dropped. Mr. Bishop, Agent Kelly said, we received a report yesterday that you've been involved in identity theft and financial fraud. That's impossible. Someone called our tip line claiming that you'd stolen your wife's identity, accessed her bank accounts without permission, and used her personal information to damage her credit rating. I stared at her. That's completely false. We know that. We've spent the morning reviewing bank records, credit reports, and other financial documents. Everything you did was legal and within your rights as a joint account holder. Relief flooded through me. Then why am I here? Because filing a false report with federal law enforcement is a felony, and we have reason to believe your ex-wife is the one who made the call. Detective Martinez leaned forward. Mark, she's escalating. First stalking, then vandalism, now false reports to federal agencies. This is serious criminal behavior. What happens now? Agent Kelly closed her folder. We're going to have a conversation with Ms. Bishop about the consequences of filing false reports. If she continues this behavior, she'll be facing federal charges. And if she doesn't stop? Then she goes to jail. As I left the police station, I realized that Laura had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Making false reports to the FBI wasn't just desperate behavior. It was criminal behavior that could land her in federal prison. But I also realized that someone who was willing to involve federal law enforcement in a personal vendetta was someone who had completely lost touch with reality. Laura wasn't just desperate anymore, she was dangerous, and I had no idea what she was going to do next. Sunday morning brought the kind of silence that comes before a storm. I'd spent the night at Cliff's place, not because I was afraid, but because Detective Martinez had strongly suggested it would be wise to stay away from my apartment until they could locate Laura and serve her with the federal warning about filing false reports. She's gone completely off the rails, Cliff said over coffee. FBI? Really? Apparently, she thought if she could get me arrested for financial crimes, it would somehow fix her situation. How's that supposed to work? It doesn't work. That's the point. She's not thinking rationally anymore. My phone rang. Detective Martinez again. Mark, we found her. Where? She's been living in her car in the parking lot behind the old Sears building. We served her with the federal warning about an hour ago. How did she take it? About as well as you'd expect. She's claiming this is all a conspiracy, that you've somehow corrupted the police, the FBI, and the court system. So she's completely delusional now. That's one way to put it. But here's the thing. She's also broke, homeless, and facing potential federal charges. People in that situation sometimes do desperate things. Like what? We don't know, but we want you to be extra careful for the next few days. After Detective Martinez hung up, I decided it was time to end this once and for all. Laura wanted a confrontation? Fine, but it was going to be on my terms, in a public place, with witnesses. I called Murphy's Tavern. Stan, it's Mark. I need a favor. What kind of favor? I need you to spread the word that I'll be at the bar tonight at 8 o'clock. Make sure everyone knows, especially anyone who might be in contact with Laura. You sure that's a good idea? It's time to finish this. That evening, Murphy's was more crowded than usual for a Sunday night. Word had gotten around that something was going to happen, and half the town had shown up to see what it was. I arrived at exactly 8 o'clock and took my usual seat at the bar. Stan poured me a beer without being asked. You sure about this? He asked quietly. I'm sure. I didn't have to wait long. At 8:15, the front door opened and Laura walked in. She looked even worse than she had a few days earlier. Her hair was greasy, her clothes were dirty, and she had the wild-eyed look of someone who hadn't slept in days. The bar went quiet as she walked over to where I was sitting. Hello, Laura. You bastard. Her voice was shaking with rage. You've destroyed everything. My job, my home, my family, my future, everything. You destroyed those things yourself when you decided to cheat on me. One mistake. I made one mistake, and you've ruined my entire life. The bar was completely silent now. Everyone was watching, many of them recording with their phones. Laura, you didn't make one mistake. You made hundreds of mistakes over 4 months every time you chose to lie to me and sneak around with Derek. I loved him. No, you didn't. You loved the idea of him. You loved the excitement, the secrecy, the feeling of getting away with something. But you didn't love him, because if you had, you would have divorced me first. Laura's face was getting redder. You don't know anything about love. You're cold and calculating, and I'm practical. There's a difference. You threw me away like garbage. I stopped enabling your bad behavior. That's not the same thing. I have nothing left, she screamed. Nothing. No job, no money, no home, no family. And whose fault is that? She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see something break behind her eyes. It's all your fault, she whispered. All of it. And I'm going to make you pay. She reached into her purse, and for a moment I thought she might have a weapon, but what she pulled out was worse than a gun or a knife. It was a manila envelope. You think you're so smart, she said, her voice getting louder. You think you've won, but I know things about you, Mark. Things that could destroy your business, your reputation, everything you care about. She opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. Tax returns, she announced to the bar. Mark Bishop's tax returns for the last 5 years. Want to know how much money he's been hiding from me? Want to know about the offshore accounts and the unreported income? I started laughing. What's so funny? She demanded. Laura, those are my tax returns. I filed them jointly with you. Your signature is on every single one of them. Her face went blank. And there are no offshore accounts or unreported income. I'm a construction manager in a small town. I make $60,000 a year. I pay my taxes and I save my money. There's nothing illegal or hidden about any of it. But you must have hidden assets. You must have money somewhere. I do have money. About $40,000 in savings and a retirement account. All of which you knew about because it's all documented in the tax returns you just waved around. Laura looked at the papers in her hands like they'd betrayed her. This can't be right. You must be hiding something. I'm not hiding anything, Laura. I'm just not the villain you need me to be to justify what you've done. She dropped the papers, and they scattered across the floor. You've destroyed my life. No, Laura. You destroyed your own life. I just stopped cleaning up your messes. That's when she completely lost it. You smug bastard, she screamed, lunging at me. I'll kill you. But she never reached me. Stan Murphy, all 250 pounds of him, caught her around the waist and held her back while she thrashed and screamed. Someone call the police, Stan said calmly. Officer Rodriguez arrived within 5 minutes, along with Detective Martinez and 2 other officers. By then, Laura had collapsed into sobbing hysteria, alternating between threats of violence and pleas for sympathy. She violated the restraining order, Detective Martinez observed. She also threatened to kill me in front of 50 witnesses, I added. That's assault. We're taking her in. As they led Laura away in handcuffs, she turned back to look at me one last time. This isn't over, she screamed. I'll get out, and when I do, I'm coming for you. No, I said quietly. It is over. And it was. Laura was charged with violating a restraining order, criminal threats, and filing false reports to federal law enforcement. Her parents, finally seeing the extent of her breakdown, had her committed to a psychiatric facility for evaluation. Derek Voss, meanwhile, had left town entirely, taking a job in another state to escape the wreckage of his association with Laura. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. Laura, represented by a public defender, didn't contest it. She was sentenced to 6 months in county jail, followed by 2 years of probation and mandatory psychiatric treatment. 6 months after that, I heard she'd moved to Florida to live with a distant relative, far from Millbrook and the ruins of her old life. I never saw her again. As for me, I kept my apartment, my job, and my savings. I eventually started dating again, a nice woman named Rebecca who worked at the library and had never been married to anyone, cheated on anyone, or thrown rocks through anyone's windows. Life, it turned out, was much simpler when you stopped enabling other people's bad behavior. One evening, about a year after everything happened, I was having dinner at Murphy's when Stan brought up the subject. "You ever regret how you handled the whole Laura situation?" I thought about it for a moment. "No," I said finally. "She made her choices. I just made sure she lived with the consequences." Some people might say you were too harsh. Some people might say she was too selfish. It all depends on your perspective. Stan nodded and went back to wiping down glasses. Outside, it was starting to rain, but inside Murphy's it was warm and dry. I had a good job, a comfortable home, money in the bank, and a girlfriend who'd never cheated on me or come home wearing another man's jewelry. Laura had wanted excitement and adventure and a life bigger than what we had together. She got exactly what she asked for: